Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, this year has already been defined by outdated and vulnerable security systems, crippling ransomware attacks, and escalating nation-state cyber warfare concerns. But many of those risks, of course, have been exacerbated by people working from home at scale. But I want to take you back in time to a time pre-coronavirus, just for a few seconds, where at the beginning of this year, there was an onslaught of cyber attacks. And with the first 2 weeks of the year centred around cybersecurity hysteria, the question remains, are enterprises and governments prepared to battle the cyber attack onslaught? But I suspect they've got other things on their mind right now. But Toby Olshanetsky, co-founder and CEO of prooV, P-R-O-O-V, he argues that while organisations recognise the importance of stringent cyber defence evaluation procedures such as red team and penetration testing, many businesses are guilty of cutting corners due to time and resource constraints. So, if the global proof of concept methods can no longer keep pace with the global threat of cyber attacks, what is the answer? Toby points out that AI advancements can now stimulate sensitive enterprise data to hasten how companies identify, evaluate, and deploy cybersecurity solutions. So, for all those reasons alone, I invited Toby to come on the podcast today to learn more. So come with me to Tel Aviv, where I'm told the beaches are empty and the weather is warm, but we're unable to fly there. So come with me on a virtual trip where we'll find out all about prooV and why Israel is increasingly being called the startup nation. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Toby. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yes, for sure. So it's a pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me. So my name is Toby Olshanetsky. I'm the co-founder of prooV. And actually, for more than 2 decades, I've been building enterprise software startups. So this is not my first company. So I've got this, not coronavirus, but I've got this entrepreneur virus. So I love to build enterprise software startups, and I love to find big problems and to find the solution for them.
And you certainly seem to be doing just that. But before we talk about the great work that you're doing, can you possibly set the scene and tell the listeners a little bit more about how this year has already been defined by outdated and vulnerable security systems and crippling ransomware attacks and escalating nation-state cyber warfare concerns, just to completely set the scene and the scale of the problems out there?
Actually, because of the COVID situation, we are seeing that cybercrime is rising to the roof, which means that banks, insurance companies, and basically every enterprise in the financial sectors that are right now being heavily attacked are right now trying to find new technologies and to run the processes much, much faster because of that. And this creates a whole new needs for different type of solution. And again, because we are a POC, a proof of concept as a service platform, we can actually have a view, which is a worldwide based view, what's actually interesting or what's the needs for different enterprises from different parts of the world. And I would say that one of the main things that we are seeing right now on the cyber needs is that anything which is related to abnormal technologies that can detect any abnormal activities, ATM fraud security solutions, a lot of endpoint solution, e-wallet solution to defend the e-wallet, because there's a lot of attacks right now on different e-wallets and blockchain wallets that hackers are trying to steal now. And we can actually see this as a trend every time that there is a disaster, or every time there is a low down in the economy, the cybercrime is rising up exponentially. So it's a very busy time for any cyber company that have a good solution. And it's very, very busy time for the CISOs of all those organizations, because they need to find solution fast and quickly. And they don't have right now the luxury of doing a cycle of a year of evaluating different solutions because the hackers are right now sitting on the fence or right now next to their doors and trying to get inside of the organization. So they need solution now. And this is from cross verticals and from cross layers in the enterprise network. So starting from any type of endpoint, it can be an IoT payment solution that is being attacked. It can be an ATM fraud. It can be different databases or different other type of kernel attack or deep cyber attacks on the network. So it's a very hectic time right now for the CISOs.
It really is, and I think most organizations will recognize the importance of stringent cyber defense evaluation procedures such as red team and penetration testing. But I've got to ask, why is it, do you think, that so many businesses cut corners due to I don't know if it's time and resource constraints, or is it something else?
Well, first of all, it's quite hard to do a good cyber POC, and it's quite hard to find a good solution. One of the biggest problem, that we have right now is that there's too many cyber pinpoint solution, which means that there's a lot of technology. So, for example, if I'm a CISO for a big organization, or even for a small, medium organization, and I would now to build for myself some kind of a defense technology or any type of a cyber layer, I have so many different technologies that I need to evaluate, and so many technologies that are only taking care of a small part of the solution. One of the big problems is that the technologies are not talking between themselves. So it's like, the reason that the hackers are getting so much success into the environment is because almost any cyber network is like a Swiss cheese. It's full of holes because the technologies are not talking between themselves, because there's so many different pinpoint solution for a specific problem. So when you're trying to when you're trying to build a network, when you're trying to evaluate different technologies, it's very crucial that you are building the POC environment in the right way, so you can really get a good comparison between the different technologies. Because even for one endpoint solution technologies, you can find vendors that are on-prem solution, vendors that are SaaS-based solution, vendors that are using container technologies to provide this solution, etc., etc. So how can you get a real comparison? How do you know which vendor is the best fit for you? And I think this is one of the main reasons that it takes now, the processes are very long, and it takes quite a bit of time to run a good cyber POC. And actually, this is why we are now booming and flying, because we are solving all these needs on our platform.
So do you think that traditional proof of concept methods are they showing signs of struggling to keep up pace with the global threat of cyber attacks? Because everything seems to be ramping up at the moment.
No, you need to change the entire process 180 degrees. The way that right now you're doing proof of concept is in a serial mode, no ROI, it takes time, you don't have the ability to know what's happening inside of the environments in real time. One of the key features that we provide is like an MRI or X-ray vision to the technologies in real time. So you can actually see when you're doing a POC with, 3 or 4 vendors simultaneously on a cyber attack, you can actually see how the vendors are behaving in each moment of the POC in real time. So you're not waiting until the end of the POC or during some times across the POCs that the vendors are sending you screenshots or PDF files, how they got the attack. You can, on our platform, you can actually see how each vendors are performing. And sorry for my language, but you can find very quickly the bullshit in technologies. When the vendors are failing, which they will hide this from you. You can on the platform, you can actually see it in real time. And as I said, our customers like to call it like MRI or X-ray into technologies.
I think you've done a great job of setting the scene and talking about the scale of the problem out there. But of course, it would be great to explore some solutions as well. So what should the cybersecurity evaluation process look like right here and now, do you think?
Well, first of all, you need to define on which layer the problem is coming from, which is one of the hardest thing for any CISO to really recognize, first of all, the layer that he wants to protect right now. And once you define the layer, you need to understand what type of technologies you need to implement on that layer. Is it going to be an endpoint solution? Is it going to be a strong abnormal technology to detect abnormal activities on your network? Or is it going to be any internal cyber threats that you would like to solve? So one of the biggest challenges for the CISO is actually to define on which layer they want to start. And once they find the layers that they want to start, you need to build the environment according to that. And you must find technologies that can talk with each other. So you will get a real overview vision of your network. Because in some cases, if I go back to my Swiss cheese example, it's very hard to find a vector of attack between multi-layers, between multi-technology, if there's no dependency between the technologies. So a vector of attack can start building and suddenly it will stop because another layer of the technology is not talking with the technology below that. So if you have a multi-region enterprise with a multi-layer network, it's very hard for you to see the vector of attack. And this is what the hackers are doing right now. First of all, they are bombarding you with a lot of false positive attacks. So everything on your screens will be red and pinging, and you will have a chaos trying to understand what's happening on the network. And they will try to attack it from different layers on different technologies. And once they are creating this chaos, then they are working silently, or even they implemented something which was a few months ago, and right now they're using it as a bridgehead to call for a Trojan horse or to call for any worm that will attack your network when everything is in chaos. So this is why it's so hard to build a good cyber network, and this is why it's so hard to be a security analyst or cyber analyst in front of all these cyber NOCs that is managing those networks.
And one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today is I absolutely love how you guys went on a mission to provide a smarter, faster, and more secure way for enterprises to go out there and adopt new technology. But for people that are hearing about prooV for the very first time, can you just introduce prooV and also tell me a little bit more about your approach?
First of all, prooV came as a pain that I've been suffering for 20 years. I've been chasing CTOs, CIOs, CISOs of small, medium to large enterprises, trying to convince them to open for me a testing environment so I can do a proof of concept for one of the technologies that I created in the past. And I saw that in the time that is passing, this process for a vendor or a startup to get to the POC stage is becoming harder and harder. And that was the reason why we came up with the prooV. But when we started digging in and actually sitting down with the C-level of the enterprises, 20 years in the business, so we have quite of a big contact list. And we used all these contact lists to meet with all the C-levels executive to really understand why this process is becoming so problematic now. We realized that the pain that we were seeing from the entrepreneur, startup, or vendor point of view is only a small fraction of the problem. And actually, the enterprises are facing a much, much bigger problem when they are trying to do innovation adoption and to implement new technologies. And key feature in that is related to cyber security problems. But it's not just cyber threats. It's the ability, first of all, to connect outside vendors to your network. And it doesn't matter if the enterprise has a testing environment, it can be a cloud-based testing environment, it can be a SaaS-based testing environment. Connecting an outside vendor to this network is a security breach, which has to pass the CISO, has to pass the legal, has to pass the security questionnaire. And by the way, some organizations are not allowed to connect outside vendors to their network under regulation. So that's the first problem. So they've got the hands tied because they cannot get outside vendors to connect to their network. The second problem, which I think is one of the biggest problems in today's environment, is all related to data privacy. GDPR, US Privacy Act, all this regulation basically restrict the enterprise of exposing, revealing, or allowing outside vendors to connect to their data. So how can you do innovation adoption? How can you find a good, BI solution or even an AI or even cyber solution if you cannot use your data for this POC? Because just using your infrastructure is not solving the problem, because you need to see that this technology can manage with your data. So that's a very big problem, which, by the way, masking or synthetic data, and I know that there's many vendors that are doing masking and synthetic data, but I don't think that this is solving the problem. In some cases, regulators are not allowing to use masking data or synthetic data. So the enterprise has a problem here because they cannot use the data. So this is only two panes on a scope of problem that we found. Another very interesting pain was that, especially when new technologies are coming in, and we saw it in AI, we saw it in blockchain, and we're seeing it in any new cyber technology, usually the person behind the business unit on that enterprise that needs to implement this technology or need to evaluate this technology is really clueless about the KPIs that he needs to manage or he needs to find in this POC. Because usually on new technologies, it's, when they're coming out, you don't have a lot of literature, you don't have a lot of knowledge about which technical KPIs, which business KPIs you need to measure this technology. So we saw that as also a very big problem that create a lot of time wasting and a lot of ping pongs that goes between the enterprise to the vendors and going back, because the enterprise didn't really understand what are the KPIs that he need to measure. The vendor didn't understand exactly what he needs to do to perform and to show the goals of this POC. So that was another problem. And the other two problems are more related to the day after the POC. So one of it is basically a prediction to know, can I actually move this technology from my POC environment to my production environment? And we saw many, many cases that the technology can manage fantastically on a small-scale POC environment, can actually beat the leaders, vendors that are performing on this POC. But once you are trying to move this technology from the small-scale POC environment to the production environment, this technology cannot sustain or manage the full load of the production, and basically it will crash under production. So if we can give the enterprise a tool, like a crystal ball to the future, that will tell him how this technology will behave on the production environment, this can save a lot of money by not implementing the wrong technology on your network. So maybe when you saw the graphs of the KPI parameters, maybe the vendor that provided the second best solution, he's the right fit for you, because if you will move him to the production, he's the only one that can sustain the production environment. And the last thing that is very interesting and very demanding coming now from the enterprise is that they want to check before they're moving something from the POC environment to the production environment, that this technology doesn't have a backdoor or doesn't have any vulnerability on the coding, that hacker will use this as a gateway to their network. So let's say that they're right now evaluating chatbot or blockchain or BI. They want to make sure that not only this technology provided the best KPIs for that specific vertical of the POC. So for example, if it's a blockchain, that it provide the best chain building in the right time and less CPU and the right memory, et cetera, but also if this technology doesn't have any backdoors or vulnerability. So what we are doing is that parallel to the regular KPIs that we are measuring, we are also running a red team of hackers that are actually attacking the technology during the POC. And for that reason, we needed to create what we call the shooting range cloud, which is called prooV Red Cloud, which is basically our own dedicated cloud. So we actually, as in a shooting range, we're trying different weapons, which is hacking tools. to attack the technology to see if there's no backdoor vulnerability. So we are trying to solve all this problem at the POC phase. So before you move anything in, before you take anything to production, before you jeopardize your network, we're trying to give you the full solution at the POC stage.
And there's also a lot of talk about artificial intelligence at the moment, some good, some not so good. But how do you think AI advancements can actually help speed up how organizations innovate, especially at a time where I think there's a greater need to innovate than ever before, isn't there?
Definitely, yes. And we are seeing now, again, because of the COVID situation, a lot of AI technology that is trying to either predict new areas of illnesses or where a new disease will exposed, and also different technologies that can crunch data very fast and dramatically to provide a good solution to find vaccine. So AI is right now booming on the medical aspect of it. It was also in 2019. There was a lot of vendors, startups that were doing different AI technologies on images, either from MRI images or X-ray images. But right now we are seeing also a lot of demands that are coming from pharmaceutical companies to actually use AI to increase the research tools that they're doing to find vaccines, for example. But AI is also used on many other aspects. Actually, AI is now like the most used buzzword on anything. AI in cybersecurity, AI in blockchain, AI in using different abnormal activities, AI in financial technologies, et cetera, automotive, et cetera. But you need to be very careful about which AI technologies you can actually implement and what's the restriction of that AI technologies and what's the ability of this technology actually to really learn and really adopt to new circumstances and to new challenges that will come to these technologies. Because in some cases, and again, this is the unfair advantage that we have, we can actually see if this is a real AI technology, yes or no, because we have some challenges that we created on the POC environment to actually check what are the R parameters of the AI and different logic of the AI machines. And also by other calculation, we can actually see if this is a real AI or if it's a bunch of a lot of computer science that actually doing a manual work behind it, and it's not a real AI. And also we found some vendors that are claiming to be AI, but at the end of the day, we found that it's a team of computer science doing manually work. So
that's such a great point. For business leaders listening, how can they tell what is AI, what is real AI, and what isn't? Because there's so many businesses out there claiming to be that and offer those capabilities, but like you said, there's so many that aren't, isn't there?
Actually, again, I apologize for the audience for my language, but we find bullshit in blockchain and AI across the board. We find vendors specifically on these topics that, many entrepreneurs are using the benefit of the doubt that nobody really understands how an AI algorithm is actually working, or more than that, how a blockchain algorithm is actually working. And what they're trying to do is either just download an open source or already made the building block without trying to do any real modification, putting some nice marketing slides around it and coming to the enterprise trying to sell it as a solution, which will not scale, will not, this is not something that you can actually implement in a bank. And with our, POC environments and everything that we are measuring and calculating on the platform, we are very quickly can find out how the technology is behaving, and if it's a real technology, if it can scale, if it's using an open source, yes or no. So we have our secrets how we are measuring all those parameters, and the enterprises are getting a full report about the behavior of this technology. But just as a quick tip and revealing one of our secret sources, the rate that for example, we're finding immediately if this is a real AI machine or not, or there's a people that are working behind it, is by measuring the cloud cost or measuring the cloud instances that's happening when you're using this AI technology. So this is a hint, and the guys that are building the AI will understand what I just said. So if we are finding an abnormal activity on the cloud cost behind the AI machines, then we know exactly if this is a real machine or not real machine, and I will let the audience try to figure what I just said.
Excellent. And there are so many negative news stories and uncertainty out there at the moment, but I always try to offer an antidote to that on this podcast and try and provide people with reasons why they should be more hopeful and have so much to look forward to. So on that note, what is it that excites you about the future and the role of emerging technologies and what those technologies will play in that future?
I think that if you've asked me this question 6 months ago, or even 4 months ago, before the COVID area, I think that my answer would have been a bit different. Right now, what we are seeing because of the new situation is that the world's going to change. There's going to be increased demand of remote type of technologies that will allow basically people to either work more efficiently when they're working from home or when they are working remotely. The medical sector will be booming. I think that the amount of money that is going right now into the biotech and into different medical research just in the last 3 months, and will be for sure continuing in the entire 2020, is going to increase dramatically the revealing of new technologies and new things around the medical area. And I think that if I need to bet what will be the biggest change in the next 3 years, is that I think that hospitals technologies and everything around remote healthcare is going to be totally changed from the things that we know it today. And anything which is telehealth and remote medical technologies and deep tech around medtech is going to boom, specifically from these problems that we're seeing right now. And on the other side, anything which is going to help on the remote working capabilities and helping organization survive the second hit of the COVID, because everybody's saying that this is only the first hit, and probably next winter we will get the second wave of that hit. So companies will try to be already ready with the right arsenal of technologies to co-op for that. So there will be a lot of demand for technology to sustain things working from remote. Biggest positive thing that I think is coming out of this area is that telehealth and everything around hospitals and providing a better health for the people is going to be changed in the good way. And things that used to be third in line in the approval process, because usually it's always a cyber, and then it's other type of sexy technologies, and always things that are related to health was always third in line for investors. I think right now this is going to be changed, and investors are going to inject a lot of money into that aspect, which is going to create a boost of new technologies that will come out of it.
And what's next for prooV then? Is there anything else you can share about the kind of role that you guys are expecting to play in that future too?
Yeah, so actually I'm happy to say that 2 weeks ago, even in this Corona time, we managed to launch some very important milestone of prooV with AWS. So we are now providing our customers the ability to use the service catalog capabilities of AWS to simplify the process that they're doing the innovation adoption. And the reason that it was launched right now, and this is a very big milestone, is because this will allow organizations to continue to do remote innovation adoption. So even if you've got teams that are working remotely, you can continue evaluate different type of technologies, continue to do all your POCs, because on our platform, you can do everything remotely. So for us, this is like it was a good time to launch this. I'm very happy that we have such a strong partner as AWS that allowed us to launch this with the service catalog. And there's a lot of interesting things that are coming down the road around this relationship that we are building with AWS. So this is one very key positive goals that we have. The other thing is that we're going to continue to support our customers with new things that surround the POC environment. So we're trying to be two steps from the industry to provide additional tools that will allow you to run a better and more efficient POC and better insight for what's happening inside of the POC. So this is for the enterprise side. And for the vendor side that are running on the POC, we're going to launch something very soon that's called Benchmark on prooV. So it's like the first time ever a vendor will have the capability before he's going to the customer and try to do a POC and afraid that he will fail. He can run a benchmark POC on prooV, and he will actually can see how his technology is compared to the industry. And this will give him enough time to fine-tune or fix problem before he's actually going to his customer. So he can do a benchmark on financial vertical, he can do a benchmark on pharmaceutical, automotive, etc. And this is also will help the vendor side and provide the vendors a solution on that aspect.
And before we started recording today, we were talking about the fact, obviously, you're talking to me today in Israel, and I think there must have been over 10 different businesses that I've spoke to on here in the last 5-6 weeks alone. And you guys are labelled the startup nation. But can you just, I know we spoke about it before we started recording, but can you expand on why you think startup culture and thinking differently is ingrained in every aspect of you guys in Israel?
Yes, well, first of all, I think one of the key things here is that we are thinking outside of the box as a regular thing, It's not that I need to tell the teams think outside of the box. They're already thinking in a ways how they can shorten the corners and how they can make it square a circle. I think it's part of our culture, and it's also part of the way that we are very direct. And, there's a say about the chutzpah, the Israeli chutzpah, which is basically being very direct. And then, people are not afraid to tell me as the CEO that I'm wrong, and they think that we should do different things. And, we're not afraid of telling the truth right now, writing on the table. Some countries see this as a rude, but this is the way how we communicate. And this helps us to solve big problems in a very fast way. And as I told you before the call, I have friends right now that are working on technologies that from scraps can create breathing machines that basically you can build at home that will help the country to solve problems without very sophisticated technologies, and also different things that we are seeing in our day-to-day life that we are trying to find a better way to solve it. And I think it's coming also from our, the say that every Jewish person has a strong mother behind it that has been forcing to study and to learn, and it's part, as I said, it's part of our nature, it's part of our culture that we're trying to learn all the time new things. We're trying to find better ways how to do it. And we need to do it quickly because, we don't have time as Israelis. Everything is on a rush here.
For everyone listening, would love to delve a little bit deeper, find out more details of the kind of work that you're doing at prooV, or or how you might be able to help them, or even talk to your team. What's the best way of reaching out to you guys?
So first of all, feel free to reach me. It's Toby, Toby, at proov.io. And anything else is just come to our website, proov, proov.io. And you can find everything. And we'll be more than happy to help you during this time and after with your innovation adoption needs. So thank you very much for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak with me today, Toby. Hopefully on the other side of this pandemic, maybe we can sit down again and see how the world's reshaping and how you guys are helping. But more than anything, just a big thanks for sharing your story today and also continuing to put Tel Aviv on the map, of course. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Tel Aviv is another destination on my bucket list now, and there seems to be a huge startup scene there because I've spoken with over 10 startups in the last few weeks alone from Israel. And I can see why it's called Startup Nation, but I would love to explore in a lot more detail about why Israel has become the new Silicon Valley. But that, of course, is a topic for another day. So I'd like to put where you live on the map and tell me about the tech startup scene in your area. I want you to message me now at techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can also find all my social channels and everything else over on my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. And you'll also find links to my new book as well, which is Great TED Talks Innovation. So I think now more than ever, I think we all need to come together and share stories and help each other wherever you are listening. So I'd love to get your story on here. So keep those messages coming in and we can get through this together. So a big thank you to Toby for coming on and helping put Tel Aviv on the map. And an even bigger thank you for tuning into this podcast wherever you are in the world. Peace and love to you all. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.